You're passing out the.
Yeah.
This is what passes for an applause line in this environment. My God. All right, not till
I think that was me stopping about
2012.
the applause.
Excellent.
Yeah, take it.
Now it's time to hear from the first Mike.
That's
Mike.
right. So hi, welcome. Pleasure to be here as well. It's always fun to follow up on, are we going to have a depression or not? And how far into the future is the recovery? But what I want to talk about is what is happening back in Washington, D.C. in terms of funding, in terms of dollars on the way. And hopefully the dollars on the way is a translation to help is on the way. And the two items I wanted to cover was one, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which was signed by the President on February 17th, and talk about some of the housing dollars that are in that bill. It's a $787 billion bill, so obviously there's a lot of dollars in a lot of areas there. And then I want to briefly touch upon the HUD budget that was in President Obama's budget release, which, as we all know, that's the President's blueprint. It then has to make its way through the House and the Senate, and it'll end up going through a lot of changes. But clearly, when you have a Democratic President, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate with the majorities that they have, you can pay a lot more attention to the President's budget than you would pay if it was President Bush's budget in a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. So I think the budget does give some real insights in terms of what's happening in the housing area. But starting off with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, or the Recovery Act, there's sort of three major areas, or four major areas that affect housing. One is a lot of money going to HUD, that HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development, will then make available to grantees. The second is there's a first-time home buyer credit, which I'm not going to spend any real time on because it's $8,000. It's not going to have much impact in California, and it's not something you can borrow against to buy a home. So it's definitely kind of on the margin additive in terms of helping new home buyers buy homes, but not that dramatic. The third major area is in the low-income tax credit area. How many here work in rental housing? Okay. For those of you that work in rental housing, I'll talk briefly about the low-income tax credit exchange program, and then lastly, there's a host of other stuff which I won't spend much time on in terms of bonds. There's a Build America bonds, a host of other bonds, and there's also the new market tax credit. And the new market tax credit is a community development tax credit, sort of like the low-income tax credit, and there's $3 billion more in allocation authority there, or $1 billion more in dollars that'll be available in the coming year. But going back to HUD, with respect to the HUD, there's $13.6 billion in the Recovery Act that HUD will be administering. And the good news is over $10 billion of that they've already announced who the grantees are going to be. And that money is broken out in energy efficiency dollars, into renovation dollars to build new housing, and new both the for-sale housing and rental housing. And then there's also dollars going out to communities. In the energy efficiency area, public housing is getting $4 billion, and this is money that's been approved, $4 billion. There's also Native American block grants for $510 million. And these dollars, California is going to get about $120 million of these dollars. In the new renovation area, there's a program, tax credit assistance program, and this is a program to help finance affordable rental housing projects being financed by low-income tax credits and other type of financing. That program is $2.25 billion. This is B with it, that is billion. California is getting $325 million. There's also community development block grants, $1 billion. That's available, $123 million coming to California. And then for those of you working with project-based rental properties, there's $2 billion of money there nationwide, $300 million coming to California. In the communities area, there's also some money that's going to be available in the communities area. Homeless prevention, $1.5 billion, nearly $200 million of that coming to California. And then there's also a neighborhood stabilization program, and that program is still being worked through within HUD, and that's $2 billion. So California will hopefully get a large chunk of the neighborhood stabilization money, and that's money designed to buy existing foreclosed properties, renovate them, and get them stabilized and back on the market to new owners. So that's the $13.6 billion or so in the Recovery Act available to HUD that HUD's going to be making available. There's also this credit exchange program. And for those of you who know something about Novogradac and Company, we spend a lot of our time in the residential rental property area working with various tax credit subsidies, and the credit exchange program is a big, big deal. And this is a program whereby state agencies that historically have allocated low-income and cash credits to properties to finance their development will then, the developers will go out and get money from investors. That market has really shrunk. Credit prices are down. So Congress came out with a rule that basically said if you have tax credits in 07 and 08, you can go back to the federal treasury and exchange those credits for actual cash dollars. And state agencies can also take 40% of the credits that they get in 2009 and exchange those for cash dollars. So every state allocating agency throughout the country is now trying to decide how they're going to manage this program, how to manage the credit exchange program, and then they also have other financing they have to figure out how to manage. So we're spending a lot of time right now trying to help states understand that, trying to help our developer clients understand that, trying to help investors understand that, and we're trying to understand that. So that's what, those are some items in terms of what's happening at the federal level from this Recovery Act money. There's also the HUD budget, and I'll go through here really fast because my 5 minutes are well past. On the HUD budget side, there's the HUD budget's going up 14.5% from prior numbers to $47.5 billion from $40 billion. So that's a big increase, and what is really getting a lot of attention is President Obama has suggested that they would fund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund for $1 billion, which if California got its 10% share of population of that, it'd be $100 million for California. With that, I've kind of run through a lot. I'll hand the microphone over to Steve Fain.
Yeah, okay.
Good morning, everyone. I could do this FedEx thing and get it done in 5 seconds, but I'll try to go slowly for you and talk about multifamily housing finance both quickly, conventional financing, regular apartment house financing, and then tell you what's going on in the affordable world where you have some type of restrictions on properties and or subsidies coming in. So with respect to the conventional world, financing now is only being done, and I mean only being done, by the agencies Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Some HUD is actually being inundated with requests. I don't know if HUD's doing any more. I don't know if the input's there. I don't know about the output. The CMBS world is completely dead. That was what fueled a lot of the multifamily financing, the securitization of mortgage loans. Banks are making loans, securitize out. That world is absolutely deader than a doornail. That is the toxic stuff that you read about. Insurance companies seem, in the last 90 days, to be testing the water in whole loans. There is some activity regionally in the insurance company world. Again, we're talking about the conventional world. In the old days, like a year ago, there was mezzanine financing, there was interest only, there were loans going up to 90% of loan to value, there was all sorts of wonderful inducements to do it. Mezz is gone, there is no IO. I would tell you that underwriting standards for conventional deals, where a year ago they were at about a 120 debt coverage for permanent loans, they're now conservatively at 125 for the agencies. Agencies are scrutinizing loan to value. We would never be concerned about loan to value. Now loan to value is the restraining or constraining factor. In the conventional world, that's down to 75%. Pricing, the good news is if you got a deal that could pencil, pricing actually is very favorable. Agency pricing, because of the fact that treasurers are so low, I just got some pricing this morning. I mean, 5-year pricing on the Treasury is 173, 1.73. That's the good news. The bad news is that the agencies, however, have to put a spread on that money. And that spread, which in the old days was 125 basis points, is now up to 350 basis points. I mean, it's wild.